Welcome to The Planet Forward with Preetha. Conversations for a greener future. The place where we ignite discussions and uncover innovations driving us towards sustainability. Every episode, join your host Preetha as we explore the stories, ideas, and pioneers making a real difference in our world. Get ready to be inspired, learn, and be a part of the change that propels us forward to a greener tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of Planet Forward with Preetha, Conversations for a Greener Future. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with an inspiring conservationist and visionary leader, Swapnil Chaudhari. As the founder of GroundUp Conservation, Swapnil has dedicated his career to empowering grassroots organizations and fostering sustainable solutions that address pressing environmental challenges. Swapnil's approach combines a deep commitment to ecological preservation with innovative technological applications, ensuring that biodiversity conservation is not just a byproduct, but a key focus for all projects. Under his leadership, GroundUp Conservation has pioneered impactful initiatives in wetland restoration, responsible tourism in the high Himalayas, and grassland ecosystem conservation, truly embodying the principle that environmental care is integral to community development. Today, we'll explore Swapnil's journey in the world of conservation, his innovative strategies for social impact, and how he leverages technology to enhance the effectiveness of conservation efforts. We also dive into his vision for the future of grassroots movements in the environmental sector and learn how each of us can contribute to a more sustainable, just, and equitable world. Swapnil, thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to learn about your path to becoming a leader in conservation and hearing your insights on creating a sustainable change through community-driven efforts. Swapnil, it's great to have you with us. Your journey with GroundUp Conservation is quite a story. Tell us what sparked the flame to start such an endeavor.
Preetha, first of all, thanks a lot for giving me an opportunity to talk. Not that I have spoken before about the work that we do. So it's personally a privilege, but also a very exciting thing that the voices that I'm going to share are going to reach to quite a few people.
Yes.
And you never know, inspiration come from both sides. So in the conversation, I'm really looking forward to also hear and relate with everything that you also have studied or have interacted with in the past.
Sure.
Just quickly, start with just taking a step back and mentioning about I've been in part of the larger development sector, specifically related with climate change adaptation, biodiversity conservation over the past 20 years, which meant recently the entire conservation sector or nature-based solutions or development discourse against climate change have taken a greater momentum. But when I started, was back in 2003, so almost 21 years.
Yes.
At that time, this subject was not really that well known, because prima facie, people were not really close to climate change impacts. We were not witnessing what we saw over the last 2 decades. And suddenly now you have started to see there's a larger awareness among the youth, among the elders, among the rural communities also, which is
even the governments are supporting, and the governments are supporting such initiatives. Previously, that was not the case. We never got that kind of awareness. You're absolutely right. Even people in the villages have understood the importance of water conservation, biodiversity, and how important it is to plant trees and things like that. It's really inspiring to see that.
Yeah, and it has become a material issue now. Earlier, it used to be something that is a kind of a luxury issue, or the people who would have a luxury in their life, they will only be talking about wildlife conservation, biodiversity conservation. But now more and more science grew and more relative experiences started to emerge. People started to understand that be it everyday life or larger corporations or businesses, they are all dependent on nature. And this is no more visible than in a country like ours, in India. The journey started over the past 20 years. I've been working in conservation, which usually anyone who works in conservation gets to travel a lot.
Yes.
gets to go
That's
into the areas where
that's the fun part. I'm a huge lover of travel, and you're absolutely right. That's something which I am passionate about. Is because of this job, you get to go to those remote places in this world that nobody ever would have had an opportunity to go.
Precisely. So what it also means is that having a city life or a rural life, and suddenly you are going and getting to come in direct contact with a very different dimensions of a life, where humans
Yes.
and non-human beings live right next to each other or within each other's territory also. It's not like a
Yes.
demarcation. As it's a very dynamic environment, right? And over that all that period, throughout my career, I got to travel, but also I was representing different organizations. Sometime it was a government, sometime it was a research organization, sometime I was a student, sometime I was representing a country, sometime it was a particular cause that I was representing. And all throughout this journey, what I started to realize is that a lot of our problems are associated because we do not really understand the problem in the first place. What exactly is the
True.
problem, and that I think is the core reason as to why we fail, despite of having a legacy of 30, 40 years working in all this thing. Not that it created a lot of problem, because we still have a lot of biodiversity still remain in India,
Yeah.
population of Asian elephants, or last surviving population of lion, one-horned rhino, greatest population, highest number of tigers, all in the country with 1.4 billion people.
Yes. Yes.
So something might have worked, right? It is not all that
Absolutely. And
bad.
I guess it's also part of our culture, also, right? We respect
Correct.
our nature a lot. Mother Nature is so intertwined in our culture, in Indian culture, right? Like the worshipping and aspects. And vast majority of the population also respects animals a lot because, in a different form. I guess that also resonates a lot, the way
Yeah,
I see it.
correct.
I think,
And
yeah.
there's a colleague of us in conservation field called Vidya Threya.
Okay.
She worked on on leopard conflict in and around Junnar area, which is in Maharashtra. She refers this entire thing as Indian continent have a lot of social tolerance, having wildlife right next to us, living side by side. And this is also, as you were mentioning, it is because of our philosophical, theological understanding. Majority of the animals are represented in our scriptures and cultures.
Yes.
People do not hatya of anybody. Any violence is something that is not really ever regard, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is to romanticize these things like hunting and sports hunting, eating the hunted food is also common practice across the belt of entire India. It's not something that is avoidable, but it's still there is a larger level of tolerance that South Asia as a continent actually follows through.
Mm-hmm.
Now, coming back to you again, that during this 20 years, this is all that you witness, right? Seeing in first hand, how people live next to each other with the wildlife, and how wildlife stakes are also being part and parcel and consider, even at the sometime expenses of the farmers or expenses of the local people, but nobody takes up a rifle and goes to shoot the animal. That's
Yeah.
not the case as you see in Western countries, that's not the case in our things. Somewhere else, our laws allows that thing to happen. Now, when I was working in all this time with government and other thing, one thing that I really felt was that the policies that were made at the top, governing the entire conservation field, as well as development discourse with climate change adaptation, etc., there was a very limited understanding of the reality on ground as
Okay.
to how this dynamic interaction happens, how the political interests are maneuvered, how the community's interests are maneuvered, how both political, culture, socio-economic interests actually interplay with each other in a very dynamic system. And this depth I could gather only because I was there on the ground interacting with local communities, interacting with local politicians, interacting with local forest department people or the government representative, and
Yeah.
what I also understood it during that time is that nobody was a bad actor. Everybody had a difference, but there was no disrespect. People, all of them, they had differences of opinion, and because the mandates were very different, if a dialogue can be actually forged, the middle path actually can be coined,
And
can
I
be
think
actually
they're all
facilitated.
speaking from their level of understanding to what you said, right?
Yeah,
What you've gathered over the years is lack of understanding. So everyone is talking from their point of view with the limited information they have and what they understand of that issue. So you cannot say that they are fully understand the issue for them to even come forth and tell you a much more concrete, solution. But they're only speaking with the limited knowledge what they have been exposed to at that point of time. At least that's how I'm listening and you're reading.
Correct. And limited knowledge, and also like not understanding what exactly is the priority. The race
Priority.
is
Yeah.
not against the resources, but against the time.
Yeah.
And within that time, a politician will have a different kind of mandate to achieve, to secure themselves. A community will have a very different kind of mandate. A farmer individual will have a very different kind of
Yes.
like personal ambition or like, insecurities or security that they want to work on. And in all this point, what I felt was like also that this entire dynamic recorded, it's not really like taken into consideration when the policies are formulated. Policies are formulated and funds follow the policies, right? The money actually follows through like what government develops as a policy, and then that gets translated into an act, and then they become a scheme,
Yeah.
which then like allows the resources to move towards the implementation. All these resources that you have
Exactly.
mobilized and have shared, obviously they are not going to give the returns that you expect, right?
Yeah.
And that is the massive amount of gap that I felt. The realities were not really coming to the surface, and that happened primarily also because I think that kind of environment to have a conversation was never really allowed. Nobody put like okay, these are my point, I put this thing in my on the table, you put your things on the table. Everybody puts like what are your agenda, what are your even hidden agenda, put that thing, and let's see what is a common minimum thing that we can actually all work on, where the action can actually kickstart it. And
Yes.
these conversations could be I was able to do that thing like the same way even when I was working with Tibetan Autonomous Region of China, that is like Republic of China,
Yeah.
government of Nepal, and government of India on Kailash Mansarovar Transboundary Landscape Program with all these three governments, right? And during that time, I saw, despite of like having so many border issues and other things, when you allow the opportunity to dialogue for a dialogue to happen, you cannot get 100% success, but you at least get 10% to 15%.
Yes.
You move the needle forward. There is at least some level of common understanding that would have not happened had
Otherwise,
there
if the
been never,
dialogue,
and it
there was no
was
dialogue
not
at all.
possible,
Okay.
right? So like somebody needs to come in and facilitate that dialogue. Everybody has a lot of knowledge, there are plenty of resources. I never doubt like that resources are not there, that the funds are not there. I think there's plenty of fund, people just do not know where to apply them and how to apply them, and for
Absolutely.
what cost to be applied that. So like this is the kind of like lacuna I felt, and this is where the kind of like ground up came onto being. But again, like in terms of, because like there was no ground validation of the policy, etc., which meant that there was a limited money coming into the hands of those people who actually do work on the ground. And who works on the ground are the local people and the local NGOs. We prefer working with local NGO, it's called non-government organization. They are equated with the government, which means they are like, parallel almost to the government. They are not called
Yeah.
non-profit organization, but they are called non-government organization. Their laws, their bylaws, their entire compliance system is so strict, as much as like the government thinks, right?
Yes.
So they are one of the most organized form, which is just above an inorganized form in a particular landscape or in a particular region. Inorganized form is like a group of women or group of individuals, group of farmers, or like group of households together. But when you bundle them together all as like an organized form, one such then layer up is nothing but the grassroots NGOs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these are the people who are right next to the ground. They
Yes.
speak the community's language. Sometimes the community themselves are the part of the NGO,
NGO.
and
Yes.
they know what is in their interest. They have living experiences of like looking at the animal, looking at the water, looking at the mountains, grasslands, and things like that. So they, in our opinion, like one of our partner organization called KTK Belt, they're doing something really brilliant. Everybody should read about their work, like what they're
Okay.
doing in eastern Nepal. Two of like my very close friends, Rajiv and Priyanka, they came up with this idea. They say that like farmers are the professors, you know
Absolutely. I agree with it. And
yeah,
that has been my work
yeah,
for the last 3 years, working with the
yeah,
farmers directly. Okay.
yeah. And so like it just makes so much sense, because these are like people who are on the ground, they're having everyday interaction with the nature, which means they are much bigger a scientist. they
Absolutely.
they do some kind of a innovation, some permutation combination, and then they look at the results, right? So that kind of like traditional knowledge, the ecological understanding, along with wisdom. These all is there available with the local communities, with the indigenous group. Somehow we have not we studied that indigenous system a lot, but we studied it as a point of documentation, as a point of just uncovering
Like
how
a
the
reference point,
indigenous group
but
was.
we never thought of how do we utilize their knowledge in today's world.
Exactly.
That application has been missed. You're absolutely right, because
Correct.
when I personally believe there are only two individuals or the two professions in this world that we will give our entire life confidently, is one is doctors and farmers. If you look at it,
Hmm.
the food is cultivated in one end of the world. Especially me sitting in
Hmm.
United States, I love Indian food. The rice and
Hmm.
the other commodities which I eat on a daily basis is grown in some part of the world, and I confidently assume that it's being grown with no harm, and I consume it knowing that it's going to help me sustain my life. And if that kind of confidence we only give it to farmers, because we know the food what we eat in is actually healthy, it's going to nourish our body. The same way we go to a doctor and confidently we know that this person is going to take care of any issues with our health. No other profession has that kind of reverence in our society. So farmers actually are next to God, I would say, because they are the ones who know the soil, they know the mother earth. They are the ones who nourish the entire world with the hard work they put in by growing the food which helps us to live a sustained life in this world. So we seldom understand how it's connected, and we only look at farmers, oh, they are the bottom of the food chain. No, absolutely not. They are the reason why you have food on the table. And so my work has been predominantly on that. How do you empower the farmers, right, to adopt to natural way of farming, not with chemicals and pesticides. We all know what are the implications, what happens when we consume those kind of food. It's not good for us. It's not good for our own future generations. So when you're talking about farmers as professors, is resonating a lot with me. And your friends, please tell them a huge thank you, because that's precisely what I believe in wholeheartedly at my heart. Is like we need to go back to our forefathers' knowledge, whatever the knowledge what our ancestors has given us. We just fail as humans to take that forward. And so it's so inspiring to
Hmm.
listen to you speaking about it, Swapnil.
Yeah. So, so what it means, completely looking at it through a very objective lens, is that this knowledge already exists, right? Secondly, over the past, 3, 4 decades, we have started to see that most of the natural resources, which are extremely crucial for humans, like water, soil, insects, which has direct material relationship with everything that we produce, right? They are also dwindling very rapidly. Water and all, I worked a lot in the Himalayan areas, also in part of the desert or in central India. And I'm seeing you think migration is happening only with the youth. I think the entire villages are getting empty. People are living in their places, their entire heritage.
And
When
they
one
go
village
going to the
actually moves
cities.
out of that thing,
Yeah, yeah, the
going to the
villages
city,
come.
because there is no
Revenue for the livelihood for them, as staying in the village, they cannot earn a living. At least that's what they think. They cannot survive there.
yeah, and also because the resource base upon which their entire livelihood was dependent, actually that resource base didn't get actually. So they over the past 2, 3 decades, we didn't really pay much attention on our natural resources, which are prima facie are the engines which produces is all provisional services, the regulatory services and cultural services, etc. Right? And when these resources are not really taken care, they are not really managed well, they stop providing all these services. And when the nature stop providing those services, biggest kind of insurance is actually taken away from
Mm,
communities.
yes.
And that is when all this cascading problem starts to happen. Now,
Okay.
in terms of natural resource management, nature has its capacity to bounce back. It
Hmm.
can also heal itself, provided
Yes.
you take the proper ecological interventions that are informed by the very simple principles of ecology. Like how do you exactly fix this entropy from very chaotic form to having much more organized systems? In a forest, every canopy to the bottom of the roots of the tree,
Hmm.
there are so many segments, so many species are representing. And when they work all together in tandem, that's when resources start to flourish. That's when
Yeah.
the kind of provisional services, regulatory services starts to come out, and then they start benefiting the people, upon which then people's livelihoods are dependent. It's very
Okay.
simple to observe. When the COVID lockdown happened in our wetland sites or also in Pangi, where we are working in the Western Himalaya, during that entire 2 year long period, the indigenous people or the local community in that area, they didn't suffer.
They were
They didn't
perfectly
have
all right.
money. They didn't have
But,
money as
but the
as
health
like a
was,
material.
but health was okay, perfectly all right. And
Their forests are intact. They were going into the forest, taking out the mushrooms, taking out the food, taking out new plants that are there. Like entire family will go into venture into the forest. Or in the wetlands case, people were eating very healthy food. They were taking out the
wow.
fishes. They were eating quite well. Only that they didn't had money coming in, but their natural resources were so abundant
Uh,
that they didn't really had to worry so much that they will
they
die
didn't
out of
have to have
hunger.
any food issues. They didn't have to starve. Food was in abundant because the natural resources were
Yeah.
there. Of course, they have a shortage of cash, but again, they're alive because food is there.
Yeah. Yeah. And with regards to, in my observation, local communities, a very huge chunk of population of India who are there in the rural areas or extremely in remote areas, etc., their demands from life or their expectation of these amenities are not really that high. They don't really need a lot. And
They
that's
don't
why
need
they're very frugal
luxurious.
also.
They don't need any luxury and all. They just need a simple life.
Yeah, and what is the point of that luxury for them? Because everybody around them is in the same boat.
Yes.
So there's nobody who is like too big or too small or things like that. So that kind of deviation doesn't really exist. So when the resources are plenty, you are much more kind of insured in life, that their
Yes.
generation and things like that. And this is much more visible when setbacks like COVID and all this thing comes. There are now reports coming up where people were reliant on natural resources. It happened in Amazon basin, in Africa also, in Asia Pacific region also, and in India also. If people studied that thing, they will know that how nature actually underpins all this, kind of like a larger safety net for everybody, who has access to that part, right? It doesn't really distinguishes between who should get the benefit and all. Anybody who
Exactly.
has access to it can give it.
Nature is not partial at all. She is abundant for
Yeah, it's
everybody.
yeah, it's like a greatest equalizer of all time.
Absolutely.
So that's what right. So what it indicates is that if we want to really be assured that we have ability to cope up with these future shocks that are coming up from climate change or things like that. The climate change as a larger term is different thing, but its manifestation emerges into diseases like COVID or cholera or typhoid or now dengue, which is one of the commonest thing. Why they are popping up? Because most of our rivers are polluted. Most of these diseases are waterborne, and they attack our either immune system or gastrointestinal things or our bones, etc. We didn't pay attention to our wetlands. We didn't pay attention to our rivers. Still our rivers are it's completely filled with sewage. It really makes me sad and also very
Yes.
hurtful, that they were not so bad just 10 years ago. Even within 10
Absolutely.
years, they have gone from this place to that place. But then, of course, if you give nature a chance and if you really put all your brain and all your resources, taking into consideration local people's view, their wisdom, and apply it to repair and heal the globe or heal that land, it actually bounces back. And we have seen that thing.
100% true. Yes.
So what it also then means is that all it is waiting, the nature is waiting for somebody to come and support a little bit of job that nature already does. Just give it a little bit of time and space and acceleration to heal itself. And that is possible when the restoration actually can be done through the ecological principles. When we worked on wetland restoration, we saw that within 2-3 years, a species which was not seen for 20 years, that came back, in just a matter of 1 year of our effort.
Wow. That is amazing.
So a lot of local fishes. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of it's not really a big deal for us, to be very honest. You know why? Because these species they're all flying around somewhere here. They're just waiting for a place to just land and have their food and things like that. So when you create a space and allow the ecology to take over, the species, the ecosystem function starts to come back because it is in the line of nature's decision or nature's own direction. And nature
Hmm.
is an extremely, extremely powerful force.
Yes. It can
All
heal
the
itself.
activity
Yes.
We go against the nature, and
Yeah,
that's why
I
there is
know.
so much energy and things.
Yeah. I actually tell this to everybody. There is a lot of awareness now. People are saying save Earth or save Mother Earth, and I'm like, Mother Earth does not need you to save. You have to save yourself because this is the only planet or this is the only home you have. If you want a life on this planet, you better save yourself and don't, abuse her. She is so powerful that she can restore herself. If you look into all our history, the way the world was evolved, evolution, you look into it, every time the earth has always sustained. It's only the inhabitants who has been booted out. So I always tell that, go through your history, understand that you don't need to save her. She is a mighty force in herself. She does not need your help to save you. You are at the verge of extinction. It's not her. So I guess it's a fundamental thought difference. And people think they're doing a huge thing by saving Mother Earth. I'm like, no, guys, you got to think yourself. You got to save yourself and your own generations to come. Maybe I think we both are speaking the same language here. So
For sure, it is a rescue of yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, as opposed to trying to think that you are the one who can save the earth or things like
No,
that.
no, no. You are not
So,
such a huge. The way I look at it is we are a small speck in this humongous galaxy. We are nobody. And if you think that you can actually have a brain to go and save this galaxy and Mother Earth, you've mistaken. You're thoroughly mistaken. You are a visitor. You have a very short duration here. You just make sure that you enjoy the time in this universe and do not exploit her, and make sure that you're leaving this place much better than how you found her for the next future generation to come. That's all you need to do. You don't need to over engineer it and trying to exploit her and then come to think that, oh, why is it so hot this summer? Maybe because you exploited her beyond you should. So anyways, that's just my thought process, and I can be completely wrong here.
I was once
Yeah.
I was just taking I was just snorkeling around in I don't know where was this place, maybe Maldives or somewhere.
Okay.
And I was looking at these fishes, right? They were just circling around and going into their own things. And I was thinking even if tomorrow humans are not there, these fishes are not going to die, it's an entire legacy of the earth. And
Yes.
how will they disappear? They will survive. Okay, they have got entire oceans and things like that. There are plenty of places where the life can actually thrive.
Yes.
It's us who will be in the soup, And it's very interesting that when Earth has slapped any kind of dominant species on it, she never repeated that species to take over.
Like dinosaurs. Think about dinosaurs, right? It used to be the mighty species once upon a time, and it's completely extinct. And that's how Mother Earth takes it. We have to just look at our own history to figure it out. So I'm now listening to how you started and your thought process between how you came up with GroundUp Conservation. So I'm really curious about the philosophy that GroundUp Conservation operates on. How do these principles come to life in your projects and endeavors?
Very, very interesting. So as I was saying, when we were talking about ecological restoration, right, to heal the earth, right? This process, because now we have completely destroyed and attacked and also injured the earth or landscapes, which is a superficial manifestation of Earth's entire core principles that are happening. That entire healing process takes time and also takes resources to certain extent. So two things that you need is resources and patience, right? For that to happen, resources are always in a limitation, right? Conservation field, even in India, receives hardly less than 2% of the CSR funding, as opposed to other priority subjects and things. Education is very important. Health is very important. Healthy populations are really required. But what we also forget is that healthy population will survive only if there are healthy ecosystem and healthy natural beauties around them. In absence of that, you will continue to keep pumping in money in your healthcare, which is not a long-term solution, really, right? So until unless we repair our entire ecologies, they are going to come back to hunt us, and the emergence of the new diseases, etc., is going to put even more tenuous pressure on the pockets of people. So given that resources are limited and the challenge is quite big, who will be the partner in actually repairing the earth, right? So anyone, as a business sense, anybody who can do that work at a less rate or a
Mhm.
less cost, cover a larger ground, ensure that there is going to be a sustainability. Any intervention on ecological restoration that you do, at least the time frame is of 10 years. Do not enter into anything if you do not have that kind of commitment, if you do not have that kind of patience, because the lands has been degraded over the past 50, 20,
Yeah.
100 years. How can we expect it to happen in like 1 year or 2 years? It's impossible. Nature doesn't really follow your speed. None of the technology can accelerate that process. It runs on its own course and it requires its own time for it to build. So when we say that thing, then the resources are limited. So the people who are on the ground obviously becomes our immediate most important partner in doing all
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
They are extremely frugal. What it means that over a period of time, we are not going to see that like there's going to be a flood of resources, which is
Mhm.
financial or technological, etc. Right? Even if it comes, where the money goes is another question. Whether
True.
it goes into the hands of those people who call the shots, or it really goes to really being a change, right? All that money trail, and that's a like completely
That's a
separate
whole
topic.
nother conversation. Yes.
Yes. So for me, what matters is that in a limited resources, instead of having like, organizations or things like that from capital cities, instead, if I can actually work with the local grassroots organization, we build their local in situ capacities. We design and implement the program along with them that combines both the traditional knowledge, their wisdom, their
Hmm.
social tolerance, their social compliances also, and like collectively bring about a kind of like design and implement that thing as like as a joint venture. Then there
Okay.
are likely chances that you will be able to deliver something that is better than what you had tried in the past, right?
Understood. Yes,
So
absolutely.
the certainty and probability increases, and
Hmm.
results are like quite visceral and quite visible. It doesn't really require a lot of brain to see like how things are changing. This impact and like bird recovery, as I was mentioning, like one bird species will appear after 20 years. Nobody had recorded that species for that one, right? And they started to come back. Like there will be numerous such species, and there are thousands of people who are doing similar work, right? And they must have experienced that thing, so they will also be able to attest what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So this is what was the thing, right? Being very frugal, being very objective, that like with the limited resources, we need to work. And we have a very big ground to cover. So that big ground to cover, you need like multiple hands and legs to work on the ground. And who are those hands and legs? These are the local people. It is in
Hmm.
their interest. It is their requirement also. And it is something that they are good at doing. They, as we were saying, like they are the professor, they know how to repair the wetland, they know how
Exactly.
to
Yes.
repair the grasslands, they know if you put up a check dam or something, that the 10 adjoining rivers or 10 adjoining kind of whales will start to have more number of water. So all
Yes.
these wisdoms and things like that already is there. When we enter into dialogue with local community through the grassroots organization with whom we work, we bring all this wisdom, we bring all these traditional knowledges on the surface, on the table. During that entire process, our job is only to listen. We don't ever come up with the solution at first instant at all. Like strictly, everyone in my team also knows that part, and we just follow that thing as a very strict discipline. Our job is to only ask questions. That this is this. What do you feel about that part? What do you feel
It's
about
more
this
like a
alternative? What do you think?
facilitation. You're basically performing the role of a facilitator to bring all this, wealth of knowledge what people have a collective conversation and let them actually come up with a solution. I don't think you want to
Yeah,
be the solution giver. You're just trying to see
yeah,
that there is like a healthy conversation happening between all these amazing individuals who's got this wealth of knowledge. How do you bring that and give
right.
us a so you're just doing as a facilitator to bring all these individuals from different walks of life to see how this problem can be addressed. That's a brilliant way to do it, Swapnil. So you don't need to be the
Yeah,
solution provider everywhere. You're just bringing the right
I
individuals.
yeah, I think solution has a tendency to come on surface if we allow it the time and patience and a
Patience,
right
yes.
kind of approach to
Yes.
allow it to really emerge. The one point that I really feel during that process, what happens is that the articulation of the problem statement itself becomes so robust, so crisp, and so cut to the point. The entire theory of change, the relationship between the problem and its manifestation in degradation of ecology or suffering of people or poverty, that all equations, that all dynamic relationship starts to emerge. And then you realize that actually the root cause of the problem may not be something like, people are cutting down the forest. Why are they cutting down the forest is the question. Like Health and Harmony group in Indonesia, they are doing really brilliant work. The lady
Oh,
who started Health and Harmony, what she did was like, she calls this entire process like what we follow, she calls them as like a active listening. And what she realized, she was a health worker, went there as like, one of the volunteer to begin like working with the indigenous group. They discovered that people were cutting the forest to pay off the bills for hospital because somebody was not well in their family. And that
oh,
bill was like $3, $4, right?
but they're cutting a
And
huge tree for that.
yeah, because there was no other substitute, right? When you were someone in your family, your husband, your wife, or like your children, somebody is not well, you want to make sure that they get the best treatment, right? What do they have as an alternative option? And the cost to that was like, $4, $5 things, right? She understood that part. So putting up the health infrastructure was a primary reason. They started that doing, and like people surrender their chainsaws and things like that as a
Wow, that's
response to
a
when
brilliant.
they do.
I think what you said, you need to understand the why. Why is this happening? Oh,
Correct.
wow.
Correct. And this thing, like, you cannot do that part by sitting in Delhi or in Bangalore or in Chennai or in Mumbai or in Pune. You need to be there on the ground. And if your aim is to actually solve the problem, first you need to hear why the problem actually exists, right? And then only you will be able to come up with like something that works and that has a lot of sense as to that, like, its own theory of change, its own relationship can be established very well. So in our line of work, for 6 months, we put only in listening, like just diagnosing to the very depth of why this started, why it happened. We construct the entire lineology of the entire sort of like the way it started and where things started to go wrong. And then we again reconstruct that entire lineology, sitting with the local people that like, had it been that this option was chosen, it might give a different kind of like, bearing, a different kind of outcomes and things like that. And when that process has happened for by like 6 months, everybody comes to there is a great alignment in terms of like what is happening, and what we need to do, etc. So once that thing happens, then the programs are designed. And this program, because they are designed in the participation of local people who already have established what the problem is for biodiversity conservation or forests or for water depleting, right? The entire implementation program becomes so strong that there is no scope that it will fail. It
Because
will deviate itself.
they are part of the solution now, because
Yeah,
you actually listen to them, and then you're actually implementing their solution. So they have a skin in the game, and they want to ensure that it's successful. So you don't need to do anything; they
correct.
will make it successful. Wow, that's a brilliant way.
Yeah. And like the thing is like, of course, in implementation also a lot of mistake happens, but it's okay.
It's
You need
okay.
to
We
stand
learn.
by and like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. As long as the greater intention, the greater things are there, the ultimate goal as to where we want to reach in 20 year, etc. Like, visually for them to be able to see that this wetland needs to be repaired. In
Yes.
20 years, now we are seeing 100 species of birds. In 20 years, we want to see at least 100 retain. But if possible, we want to bring 200 species there. If these visions are like laid down so clearly, cut to the point, fragmented and divided into year one, year two, year three, etc., then you suddenly start to feel that it is achievable. Then the fear is gone and confidence takes over. When the
That's
confidence is
brilliant.
there among the community, then you see that like, people make sacrifices towards a larger cause.
Larger cause.
Yeah,
And
because it is in interest of everybody. It is in interest of like, future generation who are the kids in their own family,
their
right?
own family, they're making sure that their future generations life is secure. And I love the way you said, right? See, as long as we don't penalize the people when they make mistakes, I think they all learn and evolve, right? Like you said, you're looking at the end goal. What is the end goal that you're looking at for 20 years from now? What is the end vision? So along the way, the growth is not a linear line always. We all know that.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
always, peaks and valleys. So as long as we
Hmm.
learn from our own mistakes and course correct
Hmm.
ourselves and then proceed
Hmm.
towards the end goal, I guess it works.
Hmm.
And enabling them,
Hmm.
empowering the local community or the indigenous community to
Hmm.
come up with their own solutions, implement it,
Hmm.
learn from their own
Hmm.
mistakes, ensure that
Hmm.
they are the ones who are going to sustain the solution for generations to come.
Hmm.
You don't need to be there to
Yeah.
handhold them.
Yeah.
Their own children may take it forward, and sustain it for a longer period of time. It's pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, one of like our colleagues are also working in Nagaland, and I have not been there yet. They are doing it all on their own. So it's really amazing that they are able to pull up such a thing. Recently, I was in conversation with them and also with the indigenous community through again like a Zoom call, right? And when we undertook this entire process of diagnosis and coming up with a larger picture of where things went wrong, and we want to repair this course and like do a little bit of course correction, etc., etc. When we did that part, we attach it with like how much financial resources we will require to do that part, right? The numbers came out so suddenly, so quickly because they knew what needs to happen, right? What kind of ground intervention, physical infrastructure, earth engineering things we need to do. Along with the resources so this is what the amount we will require. They immediately came and they said where this money will come from. That some part will come from this government scheme, some part will come from this fund, some part will come from this thing, remaining part
Wow.
will come from our own contribution, right? So just like giving that little bit of a nudge that it is possible. We have the resources, we have everything. We just need to find the interconnectedness and allow that water or allow that pipe to remain open so that things flow from here to there. And that's the kind of work that we do. Once we have built up this confidence and things like that, our job becomes we become very insignificant. We are anyways very insignificant because they are the custodians. But
Yes.
like you see this change starting to happen, right? And suddenly, like in case of Nagaland, they
Uh-huh.
immediately, like the local community, put four of their youth to work on this project
Oh my
without
God.
expectation of salary. They said
And they're
no,
doing
their
it
salary we will
completely
ensure it.
pro bono, they're doing it without any
They are doing
salary.
it right now pro bono, but the community said that we will make sure that they get something, whenever the money comes in, either through the government scheme or through asking their own political representative, that this is the plan of the community, and it is your job to bring that money and resources because it serves purpose of everybody as your constituent, in this part.
Wow.
So they said, and like four people, now these four people, had it been this option was not there, even if this work is for like just say 3 years, right? But at least for 3 years, they are assured that there is going to be they are going to be home with their parents in their own landscape, in their forest, where they spend their entire life. B, that they are going to get a little bit of money, and C, that there is going to be a sense of contribution towards their own community. Alongside, they're learning the science. Alongside, they're learning how do you write the report. Alongside, they're understanding how to keep the records, how to document this thing, how to voice your concern, not only in a local platform, but also a district platform, also a national platform, and also an international platform. Should someone among them wish to do that part. What it
Wonderful.
means is also that you allow these local youth to exercise what they know in their own discipline, in their own ways. You would be surprised at how much knowledge actually is there and how little we really have to do. It's just like enabling these all forces to fall into a perfect like a picture, and like things start to move very fast. And that has
That's
been so far
amazing.
my experience. Yeah, that
That's
things move and
wonderful. I
yeah.
think you answered also into my next question. So I'm not going to ask you anything about innovations and challenges, but that was one of the things I really wanted to ask. But the way you articulated, right? Making
Mm,
sure that you're empowering the local youth into doing it, just giving them the
mm,
space actually helps with innovative ideas to come through. So then I wanted
mm,
to ask about collaboration, right? Collaboration
mm.
seems to be a cornerstone in your operations because in the previous, questions I asked, you're only speaking about different people and different organizations that you've partnered in different parts of the world. So, how do you cultivate these kind of relationships, and what impact have they had on your mission?
I think, for me, it's very simple. Being extremely transparent and very truthful to the cause. We all understand and we all agree at first place that the cause is more important than organization or individuals. When we know that this is the end goal, this is why we all are here. There might be differences, but there's no disrespect. Differences
Yes.
can be resolved, through the dialogue processes. And when you engage in that thing with a very open mindset and open heart, people are even if it is an international organization, the people who are sitting there are also humans, and
Yes.
they have had their experiences and things like that. So nobody is wrong in a sense. People bring their own experiences, and that's why they say what they say. So when you share and like you position yourself in such a way that you are giving the path and pathways towards that goal, then people understand, they also contribute, and like this starts to become a very exciting endeavor. Of course it is a challenging thing, the kind of space in which we are working, which means like complete devotion to the grassroots and complete like giving up yourself to the upliftment and like really making successful the grassroots organization. But now existing hegemony of funds, the nexus of like how the funds and like corporatization of like development sector has happened, this kind of thoughts takes time to really
Yes.
come into things. But in my opinion, like the organizations or the institutions which are like 20, 30-year old and have had a legacy of their own, they understand what we are saying at ground up more than like somebody who is a kind of a recent entrant into the field, and knowing like people are the product of their failures. So the greater older organizations have the legacy of failure, and that's why they are still standing after like 20, 30 years. So they understand what I'm trying to say. And in that case, like then when this sort of things are put onto the table, it also allows for a flexibility and freedom, that you are not so compounded by like articulation of the clauses of the agreement, that like you need to do this thing or brand supersedes like the cause or things like that. And that kind of collaboration starts to happen. So we remain very open whenever we are doing collaborations. And what we do is at the beginning of our all collaborations, everything is in good faith and good spirit. Like everything follows, it's like subsidiary, like everything else is secondary. And these are the things that we need to really like always stay connected with. So these are the things. And in terms of like partnerships or collaboration that we do, we are supported by like really interesting people, interesting group who are paying attention to what we are doing. They're guiding us along the way. The team from Singapore, some are from Hong Kong. There are people from the States. There are also people from our own region. Some of them are my friends itself, who we study
Wonderful.
together or work together. So they also give like guidance, which is very essential when you are starting up a company, which is a for-profit but working for non-profit sector. So it
Sectors,
comes
yes.
with its own challenges, right? But they provide us that kind of like
Mentorship.
confidence, but also
Yeah.
mentorship
Awesome.
and a support, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah, you
that
need
like it's
somebody like,
okay.
who's traveled that path to show you the ropes, how it can be done, and someone who believes in your cause. That's extremely important, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
you being completely committed to the cause, that resonates. And to what you said, like people, the companies who've been in this, who've been successful over like 40 years, going through all the hardships.
Mm,
I'm actually going to
mm,
take that line, what you said. People are the product of their failures. I loved it. So I'm going to take that
mm.
tagline. It's a beautiful one, which is true, right? Only through your failures the different hardships of life, and that will actually ensure that you're more successful in the future as well. So I guess openly coming out and being very vulnerable in that sense is very important to get the right collaborations. At least that's how I'm reading what you're saying.
Yeah, because once you table your vulnerability, then what else can hurt you, right? You don't
Yes.
have to keep that thing hidden. Once the weakest point itself, like you put on the table, then
Yes.
what more remains there? And
You're absolutely right. Once you are open and honest in saying that, okay, this is where I struggle with, I need help. I don't think anybody would object to, rather than going in with a chip on the shoulder and saying, I know it all. You're basically saying,
yeah,
these are my strength. These are the things I don't
yeah,
know. I need a partner,
yeah.
which is perfect,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not necessary, that I personally feel that people, organization, they come for a reason and a season. Everybody
Yes.
serves their purpose, right? And they might come in your life or in your company, in your organization as a collaborator for like 2 years, 3 years. But they serve some purpose. You learn, both of you learn. You are not the same person when you had started that collaboration or when you exited. It matters how you exit, of course, but I feel like that everybody teaches you one or the other lessons, and
Yes.
everybody takes something back with them, right? I have my guru, late Sri Prakash Gole. I'm again like the entire wisdom and like technical knowledge about ecological restoration was given to me by my guru Gole sir. And this guy, he had restoration program going on like 10, 15, 20 years ago, almost all the ecosystems in India. And one of the work that he had done on wetland restoration in a catchment of a river, it's called Bhima.
Okay.
It's close to Pune, towards the road of Satara. There's a place called Bigwan, and the dam is called Ujni. And he worked with the local committee. Local committee started to receive a lot of benefits of that restoration. But then, because of some political drivers, etc., people stopped that work. They stopped supporting, etc. And when he would articulate that entire experience, he would laugh, you know, while telling that thing. So like seeing like people who have committed like 20, 30 years of their
Yeah.
life,
Life.
they still talk and laugh about like, something as challenging as this. Like, you put up, you build something, you created the relationship, you put all your sweat and blood into doing it, and somebody destroyed it for like, X number of purpose or something. And then you can still laugh about it. That's like, the personification of a great strength.
And that is also
And
showing their maturity, right? And having that,
yeah,
courage, saying that it can be rebuilt. If you know the path to build
yeah,
such a, such a impactful thing over a period of time, if it's getting destroyed, um, which means that you can still build it because you have confidence in yourself. You've learned a huge lesson to what you said, right? Any organization or a person
yeah.
comes into our life maybe only for a season, but there is a reason they come also, because we
Hmm,
learn from them and they're learning from us. So which also gives a really good strong foundation that we as a human is transformed and we know how to actually
hmm,
carry the torch forward. It's
hmm,
amazing the way you said. Thank
hmm,
you.
hmm.
So
So this is what
yeah,
like
go for it.
so this is what I feel like, people like us who are working on like, finding this kind of a middle path on either side, we also ourselves need to surround ourselves and like read into the history or be guided by our like, philosopher or those we look up to as to like, understand their failures also, like when they were the most vulnerable and how did they fail, how did they handle that path. And thankfully, I'm like fortunate that I had a company and like, I was guided and like groomed by people like them when I was very young, in a sense, like back in 2003 to 2006. So that kind of like things, there are many people across the entire India or across the world, we can go and learn from. They have so much wisdom and things like that. I think that's very important and very essential component and constituent for you to be able to keep up the patience and work for the cause for a very long haul, when things are going to go up and down, and also like where you need to find the inspiration, like inspiration in seeing that the fishes are flowing freely into the wetlands that you created, or like grasslands are harboring nest of like some birds which wouldn't have been possible, and that in itself could be one of your fuel, that you need to really pay respect and also acknowledge that this is something that you did. And need not necessarily has to be on social media and things like that, but
Yeah.
yourself, that's the strength you give, to
I think
yourself.
I was just going to say it's not about the accolades you get or anything. It's about the
Hmm,
contentment you get out of the work you do,
hmm,
right? When you reflect
hmm,
back, again, that's also a belief system, right? The value is what you have in life.
hmm,
That resonates a lot.
hmm,
So,
hmm.
so in continuation with that, I want to ask you, what is the vision for the future for you? Like Swapnil, when you look at the future, what's the big dream? What upcoming projects or initiatives spark that excitement for you?
So, like, again, it is an extension of the organization that I have worked with and where I learned, and I could not do certain things that I would have really liked to do. So it's an amalgamation of all these people, all these institutions that I have served, I have worked, and I have learned from. What I want to do is like, that ecological restoration, landscape management as a discipline can be exercised in across all the ecosystem that are there in our continent, like Indian subcontinent, which is like, from mountain to the sea, which means that we have got Trans-Himalayan belt, which is like alpine desert in the Tibetan plateau, that is Ladakh, highest altitude
Mm-hmm.
regions of our continent, all the way up to the coastal areas. This is like divided into 11 biogeographic zones. And in each of these zones, I want to create a very large scale landscape restoration program respecting the local ecology. So in desert, of course, it's a desert restoration, like vegetation of the desert, that biodiversity. In grassland, it is same thing. In alpine area, it's a representative of particular biome. And that I want to restore along with the local community and create an example. Like, if you can jot down all these grassroots, two
Mm-hmm.
grassroots. from mountain to the sea, I personally feel it is going to give us a vehicle to drive this thing very accelerated speed, very fast, on repairing the health of our ecosystem and healing our lands or our waters, And that kind of example, if we are setting up and if we provide them an institutional backing, that institutional backing comes in like building up these grassroots NGOs, right? As an organization, as a company, as a entity in itself, as a living body in itself, right? They will serve the purpose for like coming 20, 30 years. If we are able to establish that part. So if you have got like, a center of excellences in each of these territories, if it's these like bioregions, etc., there are likely chances if you lay down the pathways really well that local collaborations can happen. The acceleration and scale up can happen very rapidly because the blueprints are already tested and are there in place. People who can explain that blueprints are also there. People have same issues, either side of the district, right? And that is what I feel like, that this is what the ultimate vision of GroundUp is,
Wow.
that we want to create like, such 100 organizations from mountain to the sea and create a very, very strong network of grassroots organizations, which are working not only for livelihood, but also keeping biodiversity, ecological restoration as one of the stakeholder in anything that they do. That there's always like 3%, 4% budgets or the revenues categorically, legally are allocated towards the biodiversity causes. And if that thing can be done through local resources, through the support of local community, I personally feel that restoration of ecosystems and biodiversity conservation can finance itself. We don't need to really rely on somebody else.
That's a brilliant way, because like you said, there are NGOs today, maybe in different parts of the country doing the same work, but you can actually provide them as a network to what you said. At least 3% of their ethos are towards biodiversity. Just connecting the dots and putting a center of excellence in all that from the top to bottom, that itself is like an enablement, right? Like, people can have a network wherein they can share each other's problems, and probably they'll gain some kind of innovative ideas which was implemented in one part of the country, and they'll say, oh, why don't we do it? But having that structure and that network is fundamentally required. I think that's a beautiful vision you have. And I sincerely hope and pray that you're able to achieve your dream, and so that our wetlands and our grasslands are all restored in our country. So as the last question I have for you is, like, you've been in this field for quite some time now, working for several companies, and you said all this is because of the amalgamation of all those things that you were not able to do in your past experiences, what is conceptualized into your organization today. So since you've been in this field for quite some time, leading with vision and passion, what pearls of wisdoms would you share with aspiring conservationists and environmental leaders?
I think it is generally for everybody, who is in a student life or in a stage of maybe confusion as to what needs to do or things like that. I think I'll just go and tell them, like, go with your heart, go, cross the boundaries, kick, knock the doors, go out there. There's nobody is going to punish you, and if there is an opportunity, just grab it, go with the flow. And allow yourself to be much more explorer, don't think too much ahead in the future. You have plenty of time, it's okay to take your thing, and all this while make sure that you have fun. There's no replication to that. You just have to have fun. Make sure that thing is there. So learning happens. Yeah. So it is not, life is not really that difficult and complicated as we unnecessarily make it. And if you are working in conservation, going out into the field, actually feeling the pulses of that landscape, seeing gibbon, monkey giving a call early in the morning, I think those sorts of experiences are so important. And me and my friends often tell this thing, that if we don't go out into the field, into the things that we love, we will forget what is the fight for.
Yes.
Why are we fighting? So going and allowing yourself to be in the proximity with that nature is extremely essential. None of the technology, none of this computer can ever replace that part. even if you think think about it, human histories are have come through the changes of the dimensions. There was nuclear also, and after that also it changes. One thing that remain constant is we are part of the nature. Our body resonates, it heals around when we are next to the
Nature.
nature. So if you have
Absolutely.
got an opportunity, you are elderly person, you are daughter or a son of someone, or you yourself are going through some stress or things like that, give a break and take yourself a time and go into the nature, observe it, what is happening. And that's where the entire solace is. And as a conservation thing, be bold. Why should you be worried if the cause and things like that you are doing is genuine? You don't have to be afraid. You read through people, read as it is said by a person. It need not necessarily has to be your own language. Learn and grow. In Vipassana also we say pratyaksha gyan, pragya it is called. Experience, it's a self experience. Learn it by yourself. Until unless you are yourself not convinced, go exploring it even further till you have found your own answers. Don't give up on that fight. It's an exciting time. It can be very rewarding also. And there had been many great people, read through the work of Ravi Shankaran, read through the work of Ram Whitaker. So inspiring. Salim Ali, S.A. Hussain Saab, such a remarkable thing. It's like a full dash of inspiration and a lot of fun, when they articulate, when they tell. So read about these people's work, and not necessarily only the scientific work, but also their own life work as to how they became who they are today and how did they make those choices. So that's what I feel, as a message to the people, that there's a great future ahead for you if you are genuine and if you really want to commit yourself for conservation, for restoration, because this is a time of an hour. And forget about whether you will get a job or not. If your skills are really great, you know what you are doing, you are able to articulate that thing, job will find you. You don't have to find the job,
Find the
it
job.
will come
Yeah.
to you. Yeah. So don't think too much about that part, just make yourself very capable. Get that skills, get your hands dirty on the ground, go talk, cross the boundaries. Don't listen to anybody just on the face value. Experience it yourself. I think this is what
Wonderful.
I'll
Oh
take.
my God, that was amazing and so inspiring to hear that. So, as we come to the end of today's enlightening conversation, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Swapnil for joining us on Planet Forward with Preetha. Swapnil, your dedication to conservation and your innovative approach to empowering grassroots organizations are truly, truly inspiring. Thank you for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. As a final thoughts, do you have any messages that you want to give before I say thank you to everyone? Do you have anything, Swapna?
Thanks, Preetha. This is my first time that I had spoken about what we are trying to do, etc. I speak only with the local communities or those people I partner with or my team members. So yeah, do anyone who is listening this talk, and if you have more questions, if you would like to understand furthermore, or if you're working on similar thing and facing some challenges, maybe share them with us. We might also learn. If we have anything we could contribute or help, please reach out to us. Like my email ID is there, our website is there. We'll be willing to hear you out. What is there that we can say? So, Preetha, thanks a lot. No, it's a privilege, but also very nice feeling to be able to communicate and share what is going on and things. Your questions were also really great. So, thanks
Thank
for
you so
giving that
much.
time.
No, thank you so much. I have learned a lot today. You have no idea. I'm really brimming with happiness because I learned so much from somebody who is working at the grassroots. So, and to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. I hope today's discussion has inspired you to think that about the ways you can contribute to conservation efforts and support grassroots initiatives. Remember, every small action counts towards building a more sustainable and equitable future. If you enjoyed our conversation and wish to learn more about Swapnil's work or get involved with GroundUp Conservation, please check out the links in our podcast description. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform to stay updated with more stories of change and innovation. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep making a difference, and remember, we have the power to shape a better planet for future generations. Goodbye and take care.
Thank you for tuning in to the Planet Forward with Preetha, Conversations for a Greener Future. Together, we're exploring the innovations and stories that inspire us to think and act for a sustainable world. If you're inspired by today's conversation and want to be part of this journey toward a greener future, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode filled with groundbreaking ideas and actionable solutions. Let's continue to make a difference, one episode at a time. I'm Preetha, reminding you to make every day count for our planet. Until next time, keep moving the planet forward.